Deep Rock Galactic's throwables are honestly one of the most well-balanced aspects of the game. They swap and slot remarkably well across a variety of builds, supplementing weak aspects or further strengthening strong ones. I use almost every option pretty regularly, though some more than most, and unlike my other informative content, this video will be significantly more based on personal opinion, because top-level players don't really have as much consensus on grenades compared to other aspects of the game. Regardless, I think my choices here are at least vaguely representative of true power level. We'll start with the impact axis for Driller. It's our first and arguably one of our best. Who doesn't love this thing? It's a perfect functional and thematic complement to the character. Where Driller's primaries provide big wave clear, axes provide flexible and powerful bursts of melee damage and stun that perfectly complement Driller's kit. Praetorian about to chunk through your health with Spit? No problem, just lob an axe and stun it. Shellback getting too up close and personal? No problem, just lob an axe or 6. Bacterostorm looking to ruin your day? Oppressor blocking your way? Axes are your solution. You get 8 of them, they're retrievable if you miss, and they even combo with Vampire. Definitely one of the best nades in the game, and solidly in the S tier. Moving down the list now, we have high explosive grenades. Ever since they had cooking functionality implemented, I'd say they're not in a terrible spot. Their main issue is that they compete for a niche with both thin containment field and impact axes, both of which are universally loved and extremely powerful. You get 6 of them, but individually, they don't pack all that much of a punch. I'll take them on occasion when playing, for instance, Flamethrower with the Wave Cooker as Macteroclear, though even at that niche they can't kill veterans, but they're not the strongest all around, putting these in the C tier. Next up are Neurotoxin nades. These are a weird one. Part of me wants to put them in S. Under ideal circumstances, by which I mean those without any fire, Neurotoxin nades provide huge, long-lasting clouds that more or less kill everything smaller than a slasher, and provide great crowd control and DPS to everything else. That insane sustain and low attention cost make it absolutely amazing for holding in survivability, and supplement Sludge and Crow's patched coverage, at least compared to the Flamethrower, in a really great way. That being said, they go from the top down to somewhere near the bottom if there's even a hint of heat in your lobby, which is a shame since fire is so powerful, and you only get 4. That being said, their performance under the best circumstances is so good I'll put them in the A tier, since any lower would just leave a bad taste in my mouth. These are probably one of the most underrated nades in the game, and I'd highly recommend you give them a try. Last and definitely least for Driller is the Springloaded Ripper. These are just in a rather sad place at the moment. They're finicky and terrain dependent, hard to use, and limited to ground enemies. Even if you take the time to set them up, they're hard capped at 950 damage, and ineffectual against most tanky enemies due to counting as explosive damage. Oh, did I mention they count as explosive damage? Why are saws of all things counted as explosive? Because of this, they do unreasonable team damage, and you can't even get vampire procs. All this being said, Rippers are, at best, high maintenance grunt clear on the class with the best grunt clear in the game. These are probably the worst nades in the game, bar none. Bottom of F tier. We'll talk about Engineer next, who has one of the most diverse and well-balanced nade selections in the game. First and foremost are L.U.R.Es. Each one of these bad boys can distract 10 enemies, or almost a tenth of the enemy cap in vanilla difficulties. That's over 3 times as effective as a single time Steve. These nades buy NG valuable and spammable breathing room that can double as an offensive tool, letting you clump up grunts for juicy secondary shots, which further clears up aggro slots on your L.U.R.Es and attracts even more bugs. L.U.R.Es are very versatile, providing great team support and slot well into most, if not all, NG builds. Probably my top pick on the class for teamplay, and a solid A tier throwable. Plasma Bursters are on the opposite end of the spectrum, use case wise. These nades are like mini breach cutter shots. They provide great on-demand DPS, fear factor, and pushing power, and can be used comfortably against more or less any targets, like Pterostorms, Veteran Dense, Grunt Storms, and so on. They have a pretty high skill cap, and can sometimes bounce erratically off enemy geometry. Watch out for their high friendly fire damage as well. They do compete with the Breach Cutter, which lowers their value somewhat, but Bursters still fill a unique niche and are great throwables overall. A very respectable B tier grenade. Proxy Mines further expand NG's great arsenal of throwables. These things are absolute holding powerhouses, demolishing even the densest of Gruntstorms with ease. They have the highest damage potential out of any of NG's nades, but do require a good bit of setup. They only work at this maximum capacity with intelligent repelling usage or positioning, and can be underwhelming otherwise. They can also be stacked for some amusing dread killing potential, and do be careful about friendly fire when using these in team play. Proxy Nade's ability to hold off entire swarms, even if they do require some forethought, land them at the very top of B tier. In solo, they'd be arguably as high as S tier in the context of NG's kit, but their effectiveness can be pretty limited in teams. Shredder Storm Grenades, in stark contrast, require neither forethought nor thought in general to use. This throwable has an extremely low attention cost and provides pretty good value no matter what. The 40-second Shredder lifetime and large range means you get what essentially amounts to Thorns Plus for most of your combat time. Shredders are superb at dealing with small amounts of smaller enemies, letting you save your valuable attention for more important matters. They do fall off somewhat into higher enemy densities, such as those found in Hazard 6x2 teamplay, but even there they serve as convenient attention savers, an A-tier throwable. Moving on to Gunner, we'll start with Sticky Grenades, which are kind of a strange one. The fear effect can be somewhat inconsistent, which means on occasion the bug you stick the nade to will just run at you and blow up in your face. Often when the fear effect works, it moves the bug away from the pack, which is the opposite of what you want. Sticky nades are pretty hard to get Mactera meat-shots with, and just awkward to use overall. They also have the quirk of guaranteeing a kill on a teammate if you hit them. One of the weaker nades in the game, and kind of just a harder to use AG grenade, landing them in the C tier. Incendiary nades are a good bit better, covering a fairly large area with flames that instantly ignite most enemies and deal minimal self-damage. They're surprisingly good against Mactera, and as of most things fire in the game, are exceptionally potent in grunt clear. They also combo well with volatile bullets, allowing you to ignite targets with ease. However, they do suffer from having non-existent stopping power. Enemies aren't slowed, stunned, or feared at all, meaning often they'll remain threatening for a long time before dying to fire. However, incendiaries are still quite decent, landing somewhere on the lower end of B tier. Cluster grenades, on the other hand, are completely defined by their stopping power. These little bundles of Armageddon provide consistently great horde clear and stunning power. Toss one of these bad boys into any mixed swarm and buy yourself a couple of seconds of breathing room as everything gets stunned. These also scale exceptionally well with spam, meaning you get very flexible output depending on your needs. Clusters are great in almost every situation, and their method of explosion means you rarely get screwed over by grenade collision, as with other nades. Because the bomblets are so controllable, with skill, friendly fire is also less of an issue with this nade. An amazing grenade overall, and lands solidly into the A tier. Gunner's newest nade, the Leadburster, is pretty different. It's actually quite hard to use. It's significant friendly fire damage, even from across the cave, which can make it dangerous to throw in teams. Its effectiveness drastically changes depending on terrain, and it has pretty limited use cases. However, in those use cases, it is absurdly powerful, granting Gunner insane DPS potential against a lot of the most dangerous enemies. A well-placed Leadburster can scour the roof of spitters or shred through a Mactera storm. 3 well-placed Leadbursters can wipe every stationary out of a room or take a bulk from full to 0 in mere seconds. These also do a crazy amount of damage to the twin dreadnoughts for whatever reason. What they lack in flexibility, they make up for in sheer damage output. I take these on most builds where I'm not running volatile bullets nowadays. This might be the most controversial placement on the list, at least among top level players, but I'm putting the Leadbursters into S tier. Finally, we have Scout, whose nades are kind of in a class of their own. We start with IFGs, which are just great all around. With a huge 75% slow and plus 30% damage inflicted upon all bugs within it, this nade is team support dialed up to 11. IFGs clump up bugs and make them vulnerable, drastically increasing the effectiveness of all weaponry. They're also amazing at holding space, providing a decent amount of extra safety to the team. In solo, IFGs are one of 2 ways Scout can really wave clear it all, with the bug density they provide allowing fire spread to work its magic. IFG placement can really make or break a lot of situations, and IFGs convincingly land in the S tier. Second for Scout is a fan favorite, the Cryo Grenade. It provides instant freezing power to everything in a pretty huge 6-meter area of effect, stopping almost all enemies cold in their tracks. Cryo provides on-demand momentary safety and high damage potential, with frozen flying enemies instantly dying and the rest taking 3 times damage for the duration of the freeze. It's a counterpart to the IFG in that way, providing far greater instantaneous safety and damage potential in exchange for sustain and grenade count. The top level player base is honestly pretty split between these and IFGs. I tend to lean towards IFGs overall in teamplay, but both are undoubtedly amazing grenades, and Cryo, like the IFGs, lands solidly into the S tier. Somehow, Scout's third nade manages to top even the last two. Pheronades are genuinely ridiculous and completely unbalanced. They tend to be pretty slept on by newer players or less coordinated teams, given the bright yellow status effect sometimes can be a shoot me indicator. However, in the hands of a capable player, these things are unreasonable. Think of it this way. A single lure distracts 10 enemies at a time. That's pretty nice. A Pheromone Grenade makes every single enemy hit by it into a lure that fights back. One well-placed Pheromone Grenade can disable literally every enemy on the map for 15 seconds, bunching them up further for things like fire spread or AoE weapons to gain effectiveness to the nth degree. The potency of pheromone nades scales exponentially with bug density, making these things absolute powerhouses in Hazard 5 with 4 players or above, unless your team kills things too effectively, but that's not a particularly bad problem to have. While my weapon tier list video made an individual tier for the M1000 mostly in jest, pheromones are genuinely in a tier of their own. Question mark tier, representing my bewilderment towards why these things are still in the game. On the other end of the power scale are the Voltaic stun sweepers. I'll probably ruffle some feathers with this altogether entirely lukewarm take, but these funny boomerangs are just not amazing compared to the competition. They do provide the longest stun in the game at 8.5 seconds, and a nice electrocution effect, but they only affect up to 9 enemies per nade, even if you do get 8 of them, while being completely unspammable for whatever reason. Not that the stun sweepers are terrible, they're honestly pretty okay. But just look at where the competition is. These are competing with 3 of the best grenades in the entire game, and really end up looking pretty paltry as a result. They're a C tier nade. And that's it for the tier list. As always, don't let my opinions, accurate as they are, smiley face, prevent you from using what you find fun. And as an aside, thanks for 1,000 subscribers. I started uploading videos to this channel sort of shouting into the void, unsatisfied with the relative lack of accurate, informative, concise, high-level, and especially modded content there was on the platform, and with a vague desire to shed more light onto custom hazards like 6x2 and above. I've grown faster than I really could have imagined, and custom difficulty lobbies have too. Thank you to everybody who looked at my videos and went out to play some 6x2 of their own, who joined the Practical DRG Discord, who liked, who commented, who subscribed. Here's to another 1,000. Happy mining out there. Rock and stone. Also, I have channel memberships now. Consider giving me money if you like my content a lot. Thanks.